The gravel crunched under Sheriff Eli Morgan's boots as he stepped onto the porch of Fox Hollow Lodge, the late afternoon sun painting the Appalachian foothills in gold. 20 years in the military had taught him patience, but nothing could have prepared him for the quiet fury of coming home to a different kind of war. His father's lodge, hand-hewn logs, the scent of pine resin still clinging to the beams, stood just beyond the invisible line where the Sycamore Bluff HOA's jurisdiction ended. 10 feet. That was all that separated Eli's sanctuary from Deborah Witherspoon's kingdom of clipboard tyranny. He was halfway through replacing a storm shutter when the sound of heels on gravel made his spine stiffen. The rhythm was all wrong for these woods. Too sharp, too entitled. He turned to see a woman in a pastel blouse and khaki capris, her hair shellacked into a helmet of blonde perfection, clutching a clipboard like it was a scepter. "Hi there," she chirped, as if she hadn't just trespassed onto private property. "I'm Deborah, HOA president for Sycamore Bluff." Eli wiped sawdust from his hands. "You're lost." Deborah's smile didn't waver. "We've had complaints about your structure." She said structure, like it was a crime. "My lodge, Eli corrected, voice flat. "Built in 1987, predates your subdivision by a decade." She ignored him, thrusting a stapled packet at his chest. "Section 8 covers structure visibility and landscaping. Untreated logs, the woodpile. It's not cohesive with our community aesthetic." Eli didn't take the papers. He glanced past her at the forest, the nearest McMansion, a half-mile downhill. "What community?" "The deer." Deborah's manicured nails tightened around her clipboard. "Property values matter. We enforce standards." "Not here." Eli tapped the weathered asterisk. "No trespassing" sign nailed to a nearby oak. "This land's been in my family since 1952. Your bylaws don't apply unless they're signed by God himself." Her nostrils flared. "Adjacent properties impact our harmony. We will escalate." Eli almost laughed. He'd faced insurgents with more subtlety. "Escalate away." He turned back to his shutter. Dismissal clear. Deborah left, but the next morning, laminated signs sprouted along his gravel drive like poisonous mushrooms. Private HOA residence, only One blocked the trailhead he'd used since childhood. Another half covered his father's hand-carved "Welcome to Fox Hollow" sign. Eli yanked them all up and burned them in the fire pit that night, the plastic stink mingling with wood smoke. By dawn, new signs appeared. Then came the fines, crisp envelopes with faux official HOA letterhead. Violation, unapproved fire pit. Violation, wildlife attractants, corn for deer. Violation, unauthorized structure visibility. Eli filed a cease and desist with the county, citing property lines. Deborah responded by calling the utility company, claiming his lodge was uninhabited and hazardous. He came home to a dark house, the meter manually disconnected. As he stood in the silent kitchen, Eli's jaw clenched. This wasn't just bureaucracy, it was sabotage. He faxed deeds to the utility, power thrumming back on by midnight. But the message was clear. Deborah wanted him gone. And Eli, he'd spent 20 years outlasting smarter enemies. He started a file. Every fake fine, every trespass, every call to the county. Let her think she was winning. The patient man, his father used to say, gets the last shot. And Eli hadn't even raised his rifle yet. The first frost of the season glistened on the fallen leaves as Eli flipped through the stack of papers on his kitchen table. The so-called violation notices from Deborah's HOA had escalated from laughable to ludicrous. Unapproved bird feeder. Excessive natural foliage. Non-regulation mailbox post. Each one bore the same embossed logo, Sycamore Bluff Homeowners Association, and the same thinly veiled threat, failure to comply, may result in liens or legal action. Eli smirked as he thumbed through the latest envelope. This one accused him of unauthorized exterior lighting, after Deborah had spotted his motion-activated porch light during one of her evening patrols. He tossed it onto the growing pile of evidence. She was thorough. He'd give her that. But thoroughness didn't make her right. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Old Miss Lorna from down the hill stood on his porch, wringing her hands. "Sheriff, I didn't know where else to go." Her voice trembled as she held out a notice identical to his own. "They're saying my bird bath is an unpermitted water feature. They want me to remove it or pay a $200 fine." Eli scanned the document, his blood simmering. Miss Lorna was pushing 80, living on a fixed income, and her bird bath was a chipped ceramic dish on a tree stump. "They can't fine you for this," he said. "It's your property." "But the letter says." "The letter's bullshit." Eli softened his tone. "Mum, has anyone else gotten these?" She nodded. "Bill Henderson got one for his vegetable garden. Said it was agricultural use in a residential zone. And the Wilkersons, they painted their shutters navy blue without HOA approval. Deborah made them repaint them beige." Eli's fingers tightened around the paper. This wasn't just about him anymore. Deborah was running a full-blown intimidation campaign, preying on folks too old or too busy to fight back. That night, he drove through the neighborhood, noting the uniformity, every lawn trimmed to the same height, every mailbox the same shade of colonial red. Then he spotted it, a hand-painted "for sale" sign in front of the Rodriguez house. He'd seen Carlos Rodriguez just last week at the hardware store. The man hadn't mentioned moving. Eli pulled over and dialed Carlos's number. "See?" Carlos sounded exhausted. "Hey, it's Eli Morgan. Saw your house is listed. Everything okay?" A long pause. Then quietly, "No, Sheriff. No está bien. Deborah, she kept sending fines. For the kids' swing set. For my wife's flower pots. Last week she said, our roof shingles were non-compliant. I can't afford to fight her." Eli's grip on the phone turned white-knuckled. "Don't sell, not yet." He spent the next week digging. The county clerk's office confirmed his suspicion. Deborah's HOA charter had never been properly filed. The board members listed on her letterhead. 2 had moved away years ago. Another swore she'd never signed anything. Then came the kicker. Deborah had submitted a proposal to the County Planning Commission, pitching a wellness retreat expansion that included Eli's land. Renderings showed yoga decks and artisan coffee shops, where Fox Hollow Lodge currently stood. Eli was reviewing the documents when his phone buzzed. A text from his deputy, "You better get down to your field, now ma." He arrived to find a convoy of white trucks parked on his land. Caterers unloaded folding tables. A team of men hammered stakes into the ground, unfurling a massive ivory tent. And there, at the center of it all, stood Deborah, directing traffic in a wide-brimmed hat. Eli strode forward. "What the hell is this?" Deborah barely glanced up. "My niece's wedding. The county gave us permission to use this space." Like hell they did. A tuxedoed caterer approached, wrinkling his nose. "Excuse me, but could you move that tractor?" He pointed to Eli's John Deere. "It's ruining the aesthetic." Eli looked at the caterer, then at Deborah, then at the soybeans. Her crew had trampled under their designer heels. Without a word, he turned on his heel and walked to the barn. The manure spreader's engine roared to life like a waking dragon. Deborah's scream was barely audible over the sound of spinning blades, and the first glorious splatter of organic fertilizer hitting ivory linen. The acrid stench of smoke still clung to Eli's clothes as he stood in the ashes of Fox Hollow Lodge, the morning sun doing little to soften the jagged remains of his father's legacy. Charred timber groaned underfoot as he kicked aside a blackened beam, revealing the warped remnants of the elk mount that had once presided over the fireplace, now just scorched antlers and melted glass eyes. The fire marshal's report had been clear: accelerant, multiple ignition points, deliberate destruction. Eli's fingers tightened around the gas can he'd found half buried in the undergrowth, its red plastic barely melted. Deborah's fingerprints wouldn't be on it. She was too careful for that. But the wildlife cameras he'd installed after the power sabotage told another story. He'd watched the footage 3 times already, each viewing stoking the cold fury in his gut. There she was, creeping through the trees at dusk in her ridiculous tactical gear, splashing gasoline along the lodge's foundation like she was watering prize roses. The way she'd paused to admire her handiwork before tossing the lit rag made Eli's vision tunnel red for a solid minute. He pulled out his phone and dialed Charlie, the fire chief. "You got that lab report back yet?" Charlie's sigh crackled through the speaker. "Same as we thought. Commercial-grade accelerant. Same brand they sell at the Gas and Go off Route 12. But Eli," a pause, "that boot print we found matches a brand only sold at one place in the county." Eli already knew. Army Surplus World. Bingo. And guess who bought a pair last week? A bitter laugh escaped Eli's throat. Deborah had practically announced her intentions when she'd strutted into the hardware store complaining about unsecured structures attracting vagrants. He could still see her wrinkling her nose at the work gloves display, while secretly pocketing a pair of fire starter cubes. The real question was why? Why torch the lodge now, after months of petty fines and fake violations? The answer came via an unexpected source, Deborah's niece Jessica, who showed up at the sheriff's station with shaking hands and a flash drive. "She's not just after your land," Jessica whispered, glancing over her shoulder like Deborah might materialize. "She's got investors. Some wellness collective from Asheville wants to build a luxury retreat center. They've already paid her a deposit contingent on zoning approval." She slid the flash drive across the desk. "This is the proposal she submitted to the county last week, with your property already included in the site plan." Eli plugged it in. High-resolution renderings filled the screen, showing Fox Hollow Lodge erased and replaced with Sycamore Bluff Healing Haven, a sprawling complex of geodesic domes and forest meditation pods. Deborah's signature graced every page as HOA president and land acquisitions director. That's when the pieces clicked. The fake fines, the vandalism, even the wedding tent, all pressure tactics to force him out before the county meeting next month. With the lodge gone, and Eli's reputation as an unstable veteran circulating via Deborah's HOA newsletter, she'd paint him as the obstacle to progress. Eli ejected the flash drive, with a grim smile. Two could play that game. He spent the next week compiling his own dossier, not just on the arson, but on Deborah's entire operation, the forged HOA documents, the resignation letters from board members who swore they'd never quit, the $15,000 in unauthorized fines deposited into her personal account. Every shred of evidence went into a locked safe, copied to cloud storage, and hand-delivered to the district attorney's investigator. Then came the masterstroke. Posing as a potential investor, Eli's deputy recorded Deborah bragging about how she handled problem properties. The audio was crystal clear. Sometimes you need to create motivation for stubborn owners. A little fire under their feet, so to speak. The arrest warrant was signed before Deborah even realized she'd walked into a trap. Eli made sure to serve it during her next HOA safety inspection, cuffing her in front of a dozen horrified neighbors as she screeched about entrapment. As the squad car pulled away, Eli glanced back at the lodge ruins. The first green shoots were already pushing through the ash, wild blackberry canes his father had planted decades ago, refusing to die. He'd rebuild, but first he'd watch Deborah's kingdom burn. The morning of Deborah Witherspoon's arraignment dawned with an unseasonable chill, the kind that seeped into bones and hinted at the coming winter. Eli stood at the courthouse steps, steam curling from his coffee cup, as he watched the news vans roll in. He hadn't called them. Deborah's spectacular meltdown during her arrest had done that for him. The clip of her screaming about sovereign HOA rights while being stuffed into a squad car had already racked up 500,000 views on YouTube. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with an energy usually reserved for high-profile murder trials. Every seat was packed, not with curious spectators, but with Deborah's victims, Miss Lorna clutched her bird bath violation notice like a talisman. Bill Henderson sat stiffly in his one good suit, the same navy blue Deborah had forced him to paint over. Even Carlos Rodriguez had driven back from his sister's place, where he'd been staying since the constant fines made his house unaffordable. Deborah swept in 15 minutes late, her lawyer scrambling behind her. She'd dressed for the occasion, pearls, a tailored navy blazer, and the expression of someone who still believed this was all a misunderstanding. That expression shattered when the judge played the wildlife camera footage. The courtroom screen showed Deborah in crisp HD, crouching near the lodge's foundation with her gas can, her face illuminated by the flare of her lighter. Someone in the gallery gasped. Deborah's lawyer started objecting, but the judge silenced him with a look. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, "this is just the beginning. We have evidence of forgery, embezzlement, and systematic harassment spanning 3 years." He dropped a binder on the table with a thud that echoed through the silent room. Deborah found her voice. "Those people signed those fines willingly. They knew the rules." The judge peered over his glasses. "Which rules would those be, Miss Witherspoon?" "The ones in this properly filed charter." He held up the legitimate HOA documents. "Or the ones you invented?" Eli watched as the color drained from Deborah's face. She'd been so busy playing dictator that she'd never bothered to make it legal. The prosecutor dropped the final bomb, bank records showing $87,000 in fines deposited into Deborah's personal account, and the contract with the Asheville developers promising her a 6-figure land acquisition bonus if she secured Eli's property. When the judge announced his decision, 5 years probation, full restitution, and dissolution of her fraudulent HOA, Deborah's scream rattled the windows. "You can't do this. I am the HOA." The gavel cracked like a gunshot. "No, man. You're a convicted arsonist." Outside, the crowd erupted. Miss Lorna hugged Eli, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. "You did it, Sheriff." But Eli was already looking past them, toward the mountains where the ashes of Fox Hollow Lodge waited. This wasn't victory, not yet. Rebuilding would take time. But for the first time in months, the air smelled like rain instead of smoke. As the reporters swarmed, Eli slipped away. Let Deborah have the spotlight. He had a lodge to raise. The first snow dusted the rebuilt Fox Hollow Lodge as Eli drove the final nail into the new porch railing, the hammer's echo bouncing off the surrounding pines. The structure stood nearly identical to his father's original. Same notched log corners, same steep pitched roof to shed mountain snow, but with subtle reinforcements. Fire-resistant insulation tucked between the walls, security cameras disguised as knotholes, and beneath the hand-carved sign reading *Fox Hollow Lodge*. A fresh line burned into the wood, *Est, 1987. Rebuilt 2024. Deborah proof. Down in the valley, the remnants of Deborah's empire crumbled faster than her reputation. The county had invalidated every fine she'd issued, forcing her to liquidate her McMansion to pay restitution. The Sycamore Bluff Healing Haven. Investors sued her for fraud. And the final humiliation, her court-ordered community service. 200 hours spent cleaning the very park she'd once claimed as HOA-regulated green space. Eli was splitting firewood when a familiar sedan crept up the gravel drive. Deborah stepped out, her neon vest clashing with the winter bare maples. She looked smaller without her clipboard armor. "You happy now?" she spat, gesturing to her vest. Eli leaned on the axe. "Not yet. Still waiting for my apology." Her laugh was brittle. "For what?" "Showing people how things should be run." Eli studied her, the way her eyes darted to the lodge's new stone foundation, the tremor in her hands that had nothing to do with the cold. 20 years in uniform had taught him to recognize defeat when he saw it. "Your problem," he said quietly, "was thinking rules matter more than people." He nodded toward the valley where kids sledded down what used to be HOA-approved landscaping only, hills. "They seem happier your way." A flicker of something crossed her face. Doubt. maybe, or the first crack in a lifetime of certainty. Then it was gone, buried under a sneer. Enjoy your cabin, Sheriff. Hope it doesn't accidentally. Careful. Eli's voice dropped to a growl. That probation officer of yours, he's a buddy from my ranger days. He'll love. Hearing you're making threats. Deborah paled and retreated to her car. Eli watched her go, then turned back to the lodge. Inside, the rebuilt fireplace crackled, its heat warding off the December chill. On the mantel, his father's old coffee mug sat beside the elk antlers he'd salvaged from the ashes, twisted by fire, but still unbroken. That evening, the neighbors threw a potluck in the community park, no permits required. Miss Lorna brought her famous apple pie in the bird bath-shaped dish Deborah had banned. Bill Henderson strung up multicolored holiday lights just because he could. And as Eli sat on the lodge's porch sipping bourbon, the wind carried up the sound of laughter, real laughter, unchecked by fines or fake rules. Somewhere in town, Deborah was probably drafting another appeal. But here, where the firelight glowed against new timber and old memories, her name was already fading into just another cautionary tale. Eli raised his glass to the darkening hills. The lodge stood, the people thrived, and the mountains, as always, endured. The quiet, he realized, tasted sweeter when it was won.